All right, today we're digging into the data scientist's productivity playbook. And look, this isn't just going to be some list of tools. We're talking about the entire blueprint, the whole workflow that really separates a good data scientist from a truly great one.
So let's just jump right in with the big question, right? What actually makes a data scientist 10x more productive? Now, your first thought might be, oh, it's about knowing the fanciest new algorithm or maybe having a super-powered computer. But honestly, the real answer is, well, it's a lot bigger and, frankly, way more interesting than that.
Yeah, there's no magic wand or a single silver bullet here. The secret sauce is really about mastering the entire ecosystem that surrounds your work. It all comes down to building a workflow that is 1. Reproducible, 2. Super collaborative, and 3. Actually delivers real, tangible value. That's the roadmap for today's explainer.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll cover the core toolkit, then we'll get into mastering reproducibility. After that, we'll talk about effective team collaboration, then building out that all-important MLOps pipeline, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with the productivity mindset that ties everything together.
All right, first up, the core toolkit. Let's talk about building your foundational toolbox. These are the absolute non-negotiables, the stuff you'll be using pretty much every single day.
Okay, so at the very heart of this toolkit, you've got the gold standards. You know them. Python is the big one, right? It's the top choice for most people because its user base just massive and it's so versatile. But hey, don't sleep on R. It is still an absolute powerhouse, especially if you're doing really deep statistical work. And honestly, whichever language you land on, you're going to need the essential libraries. Pandas for getting your data clean, scikit-learn for the machine learning magic, and matplotlib to actually visualize what you found.
And you know, there's a really good reason Python is king of the hill. Ryan Mitchell put it perfectly, saying its intuitive syntax and just how easy it is to use makes it one of the best languages to start with. And that's key, right? That accessibility is a massive productivity booster right out of the gate.
So, having the right tools, that's just step one. Now we're going to level up. Let's talk about mastering reproducibility. This is where you go from just doing the work to doing it in a way that's professional, super organized, and most importantly, trustworthy.
So, what do we even mean by reproducibility? Well, put simply, it's being able to get the exact same results from your work every single time, no matter who's running it. And look, this is not just some fussy academic thing. Think about it. For compliance, for validating your own models, or just for working with your team, if you can't reproduce your results, you basically can't trust them. It's that simple.
Now here's a super common trap that people fall into all the time. They're really good about versioning their code, which is awesome, but they totally forget about everything else. See, true reproducibility means you have to version everything. Your code, sure, but also your datasets and your environment. If you're missing any one of those three pieces, the whole thing is basically a house of cards ready to fall over.
So, how do you actually version all that stuff? Simple. You use the right tool for the right job. For all your code and scripts, Git and GitHub are the undisputed champs. No question. They track every little change and keep your team from descending into chaos. But here's the catch. Git is terrible with big data files. It just wasn't built for that. And that's where something like DVC, or Data Version Control, steps in. It's designed specifically to handle and version those massive datasets and models, which really completes that whole reproducibility puzzle.
Okay, so once you've got your own workflow down, the next big productivity leap is all about scaling up. We're talking about going from a solo act to a high-performing squad. This is all about effective team collaboration.
You know, one of the biggest hurdles for any data team is that classic dreaded problem. Well, it works on my machine. That gap almost always comes from working locally versus working in the cloud. When everyone's using their own local Jupyter notebooks, you get these isolated silos. But a unified cloud platform, that just shatters them. You get real-time collaboration, you can scale up your computing power for huge datasets on demand, and you can onboard a new teammate with a single click instead of spending hours on setup.
So what does this actually look like day to day? Well, the most effective teams have a few habits in common. First, they make sharing their notebooks as easy as sharing a Google Doc. They build a shared knowledge base, templates, datasets, so nobody's reinventing the wheel. They're obsessed with writing reproducible code. They're great at turning their notebooks into interactive reports for stakeholders. And of course, they do all this on a unified cloud platform, not on their individual laptops.
And that brings us to what you could call the final frontier of productivity, building the MLOps pipeline. This is where we go from just having a cool project to having a real, reliable, automated product. Welcome to the world of MLOps.
So MLOps, that's machine learning operations, it's basically the bridge that connects the experimental, kind of messy world of data science with the super rigorous world of software engineering.
It's a whole set of practices designed to streamline and automate the entire life cycle of a machine learning model. We're talking from the first line of code all the way through to deployment and keeping an eye on it in the real world.
Yeah, an MLOps pipeline can look pretty complex from the outside, but it actually follows a really logical flow. First, you gather and prep your data. Then, you train your model and make sure it's actually good. Once it passes the test, you deploy it out into production. But, and this is so important, you are not done. The job has just begun, because now you have to continuously monitor it to see how it's actually behaving out in the wild.
This is probably the most important thing to understand about how MLOps is different from regular old DevOps. With DevOps, you ship a piece of software, and for the most part, it stays the same. It's stable. But with MLOps, you deploy a model that can actually get dumber over time. It degrades. They call this model drift. As the real world changes, the data it sees changes, and its predictions can get less and less accurate. And that is exactly why that continuous monitoring part is not optional, it's absolutely critical.
Okay, we've talked tools, reproducibility, teamwork, and pipelines. Now it's time to bring it all home with the final piece of the puzzle, the productivity mindset.
Honestly, if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, make it this. The journey to that 10x productivity level, it isn't about finding one more tool to learn. It is a complete shift in mindset. It's a progression. You move from focusing on just your tools to mastering a professional process, and then, finally, to helping build a team culture where reproducibility is just how you do things. And you see this mindset pop up in how the best teams manage their projects. They figure out exactly what they're going to deliver before they even start coding. They talk to each other constantly, not just when something's on fire. They're upfront about risks, they know projects will take longer than they think, and they are always building that culture of shared knowledge. The tech is just the enabler. It's the culture that actually makes it all happen.
So I'm going to leave you with a question to think about. It's great that you've built a model, but ask yourself this. Is it repeatable? Can your colleagues pick it up and get the same result? Is it reliable? Can your stakeholders actually trust it? And is it really, truly ready for the real world? Answering yes to all of those, well, that's the playbook.